Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me as always. Week 5 of the college football season in the books. Week 4 already of the NFL season in the books. Here at Saturday to Sunday, going to break down everything from last weekend's college football and NFL games, talking all things 2026 NFL draft, checking in on the 25 rookie class after 4 weeks in the NFL season, and then also for my Dynasty Fantasy players, checking in on a little bit of stock up, stock down for your Dynasty Fantasy leagues. But let's kick it off, as we always do, with the NFL Draft Report for Week 5 of the college football season, where we dig into the many of the top prospects from the offensive skill positions. And as we've been doing all year, let's start the quarterback position. And I think we got to start with Dante Moore out of Oregon, former big-time recruit, leads the Ducks to a 30-24 double overtime victory over Penn State. And if you have not been watching Dante Moore throughout this year, we're talking about this past week, 29 of 39, 248 yards and 3 touchdowns. The week before, 305 and 4. The week before that, 178-1. And then the first 2 weeks of the year, 266 and 3, 213 and 3. The crescendo is building for Dante Moore. We've talked about so many quarterback prospects that have not lived up to the upside and the hype yet. But on the flip side, Dante Moore is the one guy that is catapulting. And there is a scenario where if this continues and he declares, we're talking about a guy who could put himself in the mix to be one of the first quarterbacks taken in the top 10 of the 2026 NFL draft. Like I said, big-time former recruit, has the physical traits, has the dual versatility, can play from within the pocket, can play off structure. There's a lot to like about his game. And as he continues this season, I think you're going to hear a lot more buzz about him as potentially a top 10 pick. Let's check in on Fernando Mendoza. He's been the guy that I think has elevated himself into the pole position to be the first quarterback taken in the 2026 NFL draft. This past week, 233 yards and 2 touchdowns, continuing to show that skill set that makes him such an intriguing prospect. The size, the frame, the arm talent, the athleticism. Like to continue to see Mendoza week in and week out performing. Garrett Nussmeier and LSU struggled and lost to Ole Miss this past weekend. At this point, I don't know. I don't think I view Garrett Nussmeier as a first-round pick anymore. He's one of those guys that I think if he goes in round 1, he's going to be a guy who goes in round 1 who was kind of forced into round 1 like a Kenny Pickett. And I think he's a better prospect than Kenny Pickett, but he doesn't have the physical traits that I think warrant going that. He's not putting up this gaudy production. He doesn't have the athleticism to be a guy who's going to impact the game in a variety of ways like that. I don't look at him, and besides maybe some of the processing things, like Jackson Dart went late in round 1 this past year. The physical traits, to me, are far superior in Jackson Dart, and I wasn't even a big Dart guy. Obviously, I'm rooting for him now as a Giants fan, and I could see, the intrigue. To me, it was hard to project him because we didn't know any of those quarterbacking things. But if we're talking straight physical traits, Garrett Nussmeier is far behind a guy like Jackson Dart. So he has to be great in the mental processing, the decision-making. And right now, this year just hasn't been a great year for him. So I think he's hurt himself as a guy who is looked at as a top 5, top 10 pick. And I'm not sure he's a round 1 guy anymore. I think he would need a strong finish to the season. Then maybe somebody pushes him up into round 1. But I don't think the physical traits are good enough and the inconsistency in terms of production where I would look at him as a first-round guy. Another guy, Drew Allar. I feel like we've been talking about him forever, and it's a roller coaster with him, right? There's times that you're completely out, then there's times that you're completely back in. I was kind of hoping this year we'd be more in than out throughout the year. Just 14 to 25, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. A guy who's gotten as many reps and as much experience as him. I just figured those inconsistencies that we see from him at times would not be there anymore. He's another guy that I like some of the physical traits, But every time I watch him play a game, I don't walk away thinking that's a guy who could save a franchise. That's a guy who should go in the top 10 or top 15. And I still walk away with that same thing. So maybe somebody falls in love with the size, the frame, the arm talent. He can move around. He's a good red zone runner and pushes him up. But I think he's more of a guy who's a day 2 guy than a round 1 guy right now. If we check in on our sellers, 11 of 14, 153 yards, did have 87 yards on the ground in the win over Kentucky. I continue to think Arch Manning and Lenora Sellers are not going to be a part of this class. I think if they are, they still have the physical traits that are going to intrigue teams. I just think they're going to end up going back to school with the NIL money. I just think they're going to go continue to hone their skills. I do think if Sellers was to come out, there's enough intrigue. Like we've seen Anthony Richardson go high. We've seen Justin Fields go high. We've seen other people go high. So to me, it could easily be a scenario where Sellers goes high, even if he is a little bit inconsistent throughout this year. So there it is. Those are the quarterbacks I kind of wanted to touch base on from this past week of the college football season. If we take this to the running back position, it continues to be a lot of the same guys week in and week out. Jeremiah Love this past week, 86 yards rushing and a touchdown, but 5 catches, 70 yards, and 2 touchdowns receiving, showing that dual versatility to make him a easy top 40 pick. I think he sneaks his way into round 1. Jonah Coleman continued to elevate himself into being, I think, a rock solid top 5, top 7 running back in this class. Very like a Josh Jacobs type runner, 13 carries, 70 yards, 3 catches, 26 yards. I think he's more of like a round 3 type player. Maybe if he does it, I think a couple of guys will go in day 2, but I could even see Coleman fall into early round 4, but probably somewhere in that round 3, round 4 range. Le'Veon Moss out of Texas A&M, big week this past week, 21 carries, 139 yards. Again, I look at him and I think, yeah, early day 3 type player for a guy like Le'Veon Moss. And then Nicholas Singleton, I think, very up and down this year. This past week against Oregon, big opportunity for him. Hit 11 carries for 21 yards only. Other games this year, 20 for 84, 13 of 76, 8 for 19. He is not looking like that guy who could be a top 50 pick. So he's a guy who I think has a lot of physical traits that are going to intrigue a team, but I'm just not sure it's going to be as high as like a top 50 pick. I think he could easily be a little bit further down the draft boards unless we see a strong finish to the season. And then if we take this to the pass catching group, a couple guys I want to talk about. I think Mekhi Lemon deserves some significant talk. We know Jordan Tyson, he dominated last week, continues to show the full package. So if a guy like Tet McMillan went in the top 10, I think Jordan Tyson is on the trajectory, same way as Tet McMillan, to be a top 10 pick. I think to me, he's far and away the clear wide receiver 1 in this class. I think you're going to see him go somewhere in that top 10, top 15 picks. But then I think we've been saying all year that number 2 through 5 wide receiver spots is kind of wide open. And Mekhi Lemon is one of those guys who I think has been in the mix, most people's top 5s. This past week, he had 11 catches for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's got that inside-outside versatility. Even though he looks like he should just be a slot-only guy, he's got some strength to him. He's got some in the frame that he's going to be able to play outside. I keep saying like a Ladd McConkey, right? Inside, outside. Maybe inside is his best spot, but he can play outside as well. The toughness and physicality he plays with. And in a class that doesn't have like a burner, a clear burner, in a class that Antonio Williams has not lived up to the hype, and I think stock down right now, I think it's an opportunity for a guy like Mekhi Lemon. If we saw Zay Flowers go in the first round, I could see a guy like Mekhi Lemon pushing his way up and going in the first round of an NFL draft. But I think it would be more like in the 20 range, 20 to 32, not another guy in the top 10 or even the top 20. So I think it's Jordan Tyson, big gap. I think Mekhi Lemon is in that small group of the next guys. Elijah Sarrett continues to just roll with Fernando Mendoza. And as people are watching Mendoza over and over and over, there's going to be a couple teams that I think really start to get intrigued with what Elijah Sarrett brings to the table. I still have some separation concerns, but really good at the catch point. Good red zone weapon. I think you can line him up as an outside Z wide receiver, kick him inside a little bit to do some big slot stuff. But 6 catches, 132 yards, and 1 touchdown this past week. Sarrett is an interesting name in a wide receiver core that is wide open for the taking. People are going to look at his production, look at his size and frame, and think to themselves that could be a really steady, like number 3 wide receiver. that you can do some inside-outside versatility stuff, but he also has the play strength, physicality, ball skills, and body control to win vertically down the field. I just think he's not going to be a guy who's going to create a lot of separation. So to me, he's more of a possession Z or big slot type wide receiver, but does have the ball skills to win on the outside as well. Casey Concepcion, we've been talking about him a lot. 7 catches, 113 yards. I think he is crescendoing back up to where a couple years ago we thought he was a rock solid first-round pick. I'm not so sure he's back in that regard just yet, but I definitely think he's on the radar as a potential day 2 prospect and increasing his stock throughout this year. Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama, 5 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown. The thing about Bernard is I think in a normal year he'd be a definitive like 2nd or 3rd round pick. I think there's a possibility he could push his way up the board. He's got big playability. He can win vertically down the field. He's getting he'll get a lot of buzz with the Alabama bump. So I think Bernard is an interesting guy who could elevate his draft stock into the top 50 mix for sure. And then one other name I want to bring up is Gary Bryant Jr. I mean, I feel like Gary Bryant, we talked about him like 4 years ago, it feels like, at USC when he had an amazing like redshirt freshman year. He was being talked about as a redshirt sophomore who could have been a top 50 pick. And then it's been injuries and more injuries and lack of production. And then he transferred to Oregon and he didn't play much. And now we're getting an opportunity. And this past week, 6 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. And Gary Bryant is a guy that he has a skill set. He's a guy who was highly regarded coming out of high school. We saw him perform really well early in his collegiate career. So it's nice to see these guys kind of reappear. He might not be a Senior Bowl guy. Maybe he ends up at a Shrine Bowl or one of those other bowls, the NFLPA Bowl. But he could be a guy that I think if he's fully back and he finishes out this year strong, you could see Gary Bryant putting himself back on the map to at least be in consideration to be an NFL prospect. And it was on a trajectory for a while that didn't even look like that was going to be a possibility. So there it is, guys, the NFL draft report for week 5 of the college football season. Let's spin this over now to the Sunday game, and let's talk about the rookie class from this past year and check in on them after week 4 of the NFL season. Let's start the quarterback position. I watched every play, every moment of that Giants game, and I thought Jackson Dart really held his own against a tough Chargers defense. Tough first spot. It was at home, but still a really well-coached team with Jim Harbaugh and a good 3-0 Chargers football team. First drive, scripted drive right down the field. They scored a touchdown. Dart showing the athleticism, showing the improv ability to play off structure and throw on the run, his toughness and physicality at times. So, yeah, the stats weren't gaudy. 30 of 20, 111 yards and a touchdown. Did have 10 rushes for 54 yards as well. He could have had another touchdown or two also. It was a bad drop by Wan'Dale Robinson on one of them, but I thought Dart really looked good, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Now, obviously, the Malik Neighbors injury really put a little bit of a damper on things for Jackson Dart, but I think he's going to be the most intriguing quarterback prospect from this year for right now, because Cam Ward continued to struggle, and that Titans team, I don't know what's going on with Calvin Ridley. They have no other playmakers. Eligio Manor's playing a lot. Tyler Lockett's playing a lot. The run game can't really get going. And this past week, 10 of 20, 108 yards and an interception. So right now, even without Malik Neighbors, I do think we're going to see a little bit more from Jackson Dart than Cam Ward the rest of this year. But that doesn't mean I still don't like Cam Ward. I think Tennessee really has to invest free agent dollars in a wide receiver and potentially a early first-round pick. Give a guy like Cam Ward, a guy like Jordan Tyson. I'd be very intrigued with that. Go out in free agency, get him a weapon there. Continue to fortify the O-lines and give them a real chance. And I think Brian Callahan's probably going to be fired, and I think they're going to have to make sure they get somebody in there that, A, believes in Cam Ward, builds an offense that caters to his skill set, and then really stock up on the wide receivers to give Cam Ward a chance moving forward. It sounds like Dylan Gabriel is going to get the start for Cleveland, so the veteran experiment with Joe Flacco. I think Gabriel will get the ball for a little bit, and then I think he'll inevitably fail as well. And I think we'll see a little bit of Shedeur Sanders. Cleveland's got to go through everybody this year because they have 2 first-round picks. They're going to be in the market for a quarterback. They have to make sure they didn't happen to strike gold with Dylan Gabriel in round 3 or Shedeur Sanders in round 5. So I don't think Sanders or Gabriel is going to be their week 1 starter next year, or at least their year-long franchise-type starter. I think they'll look to get somebody in the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft. Running backs. Ashton Jeanty. I told everybody to relax on Ashton Jeanty. This past week, up against the Bears, again, Bears do not have a great run defense, but Jeanty broke out in a big way. People were waiting for this 128 yards and a touchdown. But the thing I really want to focus in on is I feel like people have forgotten how great of a pass catcher Ashton Jeanty was a couple years ago in college. Now, last year in college, Boise State didn't ask him to do much, but Jeanty is a prolific pass catcher. This past week, he had 2 catches. He took them both for touchdowns. That's the type of upside Ashton Jeanty offers. Three-down capabilities, can impact the game as a runner or receiver. So I think Jeanty will use that week 4 performance to kind of springboard him here for the rest of this year. Woody Marks was the other breakout running back of the week. It looks like 21 total touches, 69 yards rushing and a touchdown, 50 yards receiving and a touchdown. And I don't know how they don't make him now the focal point of that Texans backfield. I don't think we're going to see Joe Mixon all year. Nick Chubb doesn't have it anymore. They need to get Woody Marks 15 to 17 touches a week between passing and between receiving and rushing. This past week, he carried 21. So I think it's in the capabilities of him. I think he's going to be an integral player and potentially an RB2 the rest of the year in fantasy. Quinshon Judkins just continues to be a bell cow for Cleveland. 21 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown. At this point, like if he continues on the trajectory he is, there's a lot of Jonathan Taylor vibes. And it's hard to project guys now to be true workhorses, especially if they're not taking like the top 5 or top 10 like an Ashton Jeanty. But Judkins is really in a position. And I had my concerns because I love Dylan Sampson. And I had concerns about the passing offense that, you know, I did have Travion Henderson ahead of Quinshon Judkins. And right now, that looks like a mistake. I'm still high on Travion Henderson, so I'm not going to say it ends up being a mistake. But if Quinshon Judkins is going to be this kind of bell cow and the upside that he offers, there's a Jonathan Taylor-like ceiling to that. And I just didn't know that with the 4th round pick 2 rounds later in Dylan Sampson and the other scenario set up, I didn't know if that was going to be the case. But so far, it looks like that as well. Just mentioned Travion Henderson this past week, 7 carries, 32 yards, and a touchdown in that Patriots blowout over the Panthers. Still want to see him get more usage. I don't know what it's going to take for Henderson to kind of get like 12 to 15 touches a week, but that's what I think he should be getting. And especially this year, the Patriots aren't going anywhere. Like this should be a year to kind of build Travion Henderson into that role to kind of, so next year they know that he could handle 12 to 15 touches and still be a big time performer. I think we'll slowly get there, but right now it's impossible not to say you prefer Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. I still think the gap can narrow for sure. But for it to narrow, Travion Henderson's got to be like Jahmyr Gibbs light, Devin Achane light. He's got to be 50 to 70. He's got to be 75% of them for, I think, to him now to outplay a Quinshon Judkins type, who I do think is on that Jonathan Taylor type trajectory. Caleb Johnson, even with the late news of Jaylen Warren missing this game, Steelers just don't trust him. I mean, Kenny Gainwell had a monster performance this past week. Caleb Johnson had 6 carries for 22 yards. I think it's officially time to really be worried about what Caleb Johnson might offer. I think if you can get out and get I doubt you can get a late round 1 rookie pick, but maybe an early 2nd round rookie pick, maybe get an intriguing player. I'm not sure if there's still somebody in high on Caleb Johnson and I could get a decent return for him, I might get out while I can and just say, you know what? If he hits, he hits. If not, I have another chance at this and a guy to maybe have a more of an immediate impact in terms of the coaching staff not kind of burying him. Cam Scatterbo, with the Tyrone Tracy injury, has an opportunity to really seize control of that backfield this past week. 25 carries for 79 yards, and he better get ready to carry a heavy workload because without Malik Neighbors, you're going to see Cam Scatterbo run a lot. You're going to see Jackson Dart run a lot. And when they're winning, you're going to see a whole lot of Cam Scatterbo, I think 15 to 22 type touches a week from Cam Scatterbo. Next up, let's take this to the receivers. Oh, sorry. One more, RJ Harvey in Denver's blowout win on Monday Night Football, 14 carries, 58 yards. But then what you really like to see, 4 catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown. RJ Harvey, if he starts getting those 3 to 4 catches a week and some rushing attempts, That's where you're going to start to see him start to cut into J.K. Dobbins' workload. I know it was a blowout, so I don't want to take anything away. If the game was close, it might have been a lot more J.K. Dobbins, but it's nice to see R.J. Harvey put that production on the box score to, I think, earn more opportunities moving forward, and I think that's probably what he has done. If we take this to the pass catchers, let's start with the tight ends. I watched that game on Thursday night, Cardinals versus the Seahawks, and I think it's just a matter of when, not if, you're going to start to see Elijah Arroyo break out and be a significant factor, not only for the Seahawks, but also in fantasy. I think he's got low tight end one type upside due to his athleticism, his pass catching ability, his ability to stay on the field because he's a functional blocker, and that's going to earn him opportunity. So Arroyo is a guy who I think stock up on him now. Mason Taylor this past week, 5 catches, 65 yards. So Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, Harold Fannin, all looking good so far in the early going. And then obviously the rookie Tyler Warren, 5 catches, 70 yards, and a 1-yard rushing touchdown. Warren is now put himself in position that besides Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, I don't think there's another tight end even close to Tyler Warren in dynasty circles. So it's Bowers, it's McBride, it's Tyler Warren in terms of the top 3 in terms of dynasty. At the receiver position, Isaiah Bond, with Cedric Tillman now out, Isaiah Bond's going to get a real opportunity. This is a guy who had round 2, early round 3 type talent. If it wasn't for some concerns about a potential investigation, he would have been drafted, I think, somewhere in the top 100, somewhere in the latter part of round 2, through round 3, big-time speed. He's got ball skills. There's a lot to like about Isaiah Bond. Obviously, the quarterbacking situation there in Cleveland is suspect. But besides Jerry Jeudy, who's kind of came back to reality this year, and Cedric Tillman getting hurt, there's a real opportunity for Isaiah Bond to develop and be an integral part of that Browns offense by the end of this year and especially moving into next year. Emeka Egbuka continues to shine. 4 catches, 101 yards, and 1 touchdown. Chris Godwin did come back. Mike Evans missed. It'll be interesting to see Egbuka's stat line when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are both there. So I'm interested to see, do we continue? I think it's too hard to put, the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, or the toothpaste back in the tube. Egbuka is a very talented player. I think he could arguably be the most talented wide receiver on the roster right now at Mike Evans' age and Chris Godwin coming back from injury. So I think Baker Mayfield is going to lean in heavily on Emeka Egbuka even as the year goes on. If we now take this, so there's the NFL rookie report for week 4 of the college football season. If we now spin this over to the Dynasty Fantasy Report for week 4, let's talk about a couple. First off, 2 big injuries. Obviously, Malik Neighbors goes down. There is major ramifications. The rest of the season is now lost. Next year, we'll see first year back from, it did happen very early in the year, but sometimes the first year back is just not as good as what you expect. But I'll say this. Malik Neighbors is a very young player. The injury happened early in the year. Somebody might be a contending team and have Malik Neighbors at this point. I would at least field out the owner of the Malik Neighbors in their dynasty league and see if he's really struggling but trying to win this year, and see if you can get him. If you're not a contender, if you're a middle of the pack team, or definitely if you're a rebuilding team, if you can get your hands on Malik Neighbors, it won't cost you as much as it would have a week ago. It's still going to probably cost you a lot, but I still think there's at least worthy of checking in on the Malik Neighbors owner to see if maybe you have something or a couple pieces that could help him this year, and you could somehow steal Malik Neighbors off his team in a dynasty league. It still won't be cheap, but I would at least check in and see what the owner is willing to say. And then Tyreek Hill, unfortunately, the serious injury on Monday Night Football. At this point, if I had Tyreek Hill in any dynasty league and I could get anything for him, I would. His age, the ACL, the dislocated knee, and all the other issues that came from that injury, I don't know if we ever see Tyreek Hill as a fantasy factor again. So if somebody's willing to say, I'll give you a second-round rookie pick, I might just take it and get out. If there's a young player that you're semi-intrigued with, I might just take it and say, give me that and a third-round rookie pick and take it. So I would at least check in on the Neighbors and Tyreek owners just to kind of see where they're at in terms of trade value for either of those players. Let's start with the stock up. Stock up. James Cook, Kendre Miller, Hunter Henry, George Pickens, Puka Nacua and Jordan Love are my stock ups. So let's go in reverse order. Start the quarterback position. Jordan Love is looking like the player who last year there was a lot of buzz going into the season. Then he got hurt early in the year, and he didn't live up to it. He came back. He never looked as good the rest of the way. But Jordan Love has the ability to be a top 12 type quarterback. So I'm intrigued with Jordan Love. He's probably being valued somewhere as like QB 17 to QB 18 potentially in dynasty leagues. I think he's more like 11 to 14. So I'd be in on buying Jordan Love. James Cook, people were so worried. One, that he wasn't going to stay in Buffalo. 2, touchdown regression. 3, Ray Davis. Well, first off, the talent disparity between James Cook and Ray Davis is as wide as it is Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. They're just totally different what they bring to the table. James Cook has shown that he can repeat the touchdowns. He has been a big-time touchdown scorer. He plays on a great offense. So there is a lot to like about James Cook. And I would say if he's not being valued as a top 12 dynasty running back, you should go out and aggressively try to buy him. Kendre Miller. I think Alvin Kamara is going to be traded within the next couple of weeks. And if Alvin Kamara is traded within the next couple of weeks, I think there's this opportunity for Kendre Miller to finally be a part of that Saints offense and see if he could finally live up to where his draft stock was when he came out of the draft. So this past week, 65 yards and a rushing touchdown. So I like Kendre Miller. See if you can get him on your team now. If you need a tight end, it won't cost you much because his age. But Hunter Henry, I think he might have a couple good years here with Drake May. So I think Hunter Henry, I think could be a low tight end 1 that you could probably still get as a mid to low tight end 2 in a dynasty trade. So I like Hunter Henry. George Pickens, we saw him this week without CeeDee Lamb explode for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. I really do think George Pickens is going to end up staying in Dallas. And I think him and Dak Prescott, even with CeeDee Lamb there's enough to go around that I think right now I'm more confident in George Pickens in his Dallas landing than I ever was with him with the Steelers. And then I wanted to bring up Puka Nacua because at this point his stock can't be any higher. And it is a legitimate conversation now. Now with Malik Neighbors' injury, you got Chase, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got Justin Jefferson. I think Puka Nacua is right there. And if somebody wants to have Puka Nacua as the number 1 overall wide receiver in Dynasty, I do not think there's an argument that strongly says he's not that. So I just wanted to make sure I at least brought him out that, like, at this point now, he could be considered the number 1 wide receiver in all of Dynasty. In terms of stock down, I got 4 names here. 1, Calvin Ridley. 2, Ladd McConkey, but I'll talk more about that in depth in a second. And then 3, 2 more Panthers, Chuba Hubbard and Bryce Young. So we'll start with the Panthers. I've been down on Bryce Young most of his career, even though I liked him coming out. I thought last year was a little bit of a mirage at the end of the year, and I think we're seeing it. I just don't think he's going to be a good NFL starting quarterback. So I think his dynasty value, even in 2 quarterback leagues, is very low. So if somebody still thinks like, oh, last year he can get back to that, former number 1 overall pick, I don't think there's going to be this big mirage. He doesn't do much with his legs. So I think Bryce Young is a guy stock way down. Chuba Hubbard, I'm going to say stock down because I think the Panthers offense just looks horrendous. This was supposed to be the year we were locked in to Chuba Hubbard as a top 15 to top 18 back because we don't know what next year is going to bring. Does Jonathan Brooks find his way back and have anything left to make that once upon a time made him, the first rookie taken in that running back class 2 years ago? Maybe. Do they invest another thing? Did they give Trevor Etienne a chance? Do they give Rico Dowdle a chance later in the year? So I think Trevor Hubbard is a good player. I think he's going to hold on to the starting job there. I think he's going to be fed a lot of looks this year. But if he doesn't give you that top 15 to top 18 type performance this year collectively on the season, I'm not sure we're ever going to get it after this year. So I do think you at least got to see if you need a guy who's going to get enough workload this year, Hubbard could still be your guy to be an RB2. But I do think moving forward, if you're not a contender this year, I might get out now and get something back that I think has more long-term sustainability. Calvin Ridley, I really thought he was going to be I thought he was going to have a big-time year for Cam Ward. And he now is barely playing this past week. You wonder if they potentially look to trade him. And I'm a Calvin Ridley guy, but it's impossible not to say stock down at the moment on Calvin Ridley. And then Ladd McConkey. Before the year started, he was in most people's top 10s or 12s at dynasty wide receivers. Right now, it's impossible not to say stock down. Quentin Johnson's exploded. Keenan Allen's turning back the clock. But let's think long-term here. While stock is down on Ladd McConkey, I think right now, this moment, him and Brian Thomas are my number 1 and number 2 dynasty buys in all of Dynasty. I bought Ladd McConkey last week, just put into perspective. Devonta Smith and Daniel Jones, 1 quarterback league. I was able to get Ladd McConkey. And I know he went out there and he had 6 looks and only 1 catch, and it was a horrendous performance against the Giants. And Brian Thomas still can't get it going. But to me, 4 weeks ago, these guys were valued as top 10 dynasty wide receiver assets. They had amazing rookie years. The case could have been made that Ladd McConkey, I think Matt Harmon made the case that he might have been the best rookie wide receiver out of anybody last year. So I still think whether Keenan Allen can't stay healthy, whether they just get Ladd McConkey going, whether Quinton Johnston starts having issues with drops again, Ladd McConkey's too good. He's too good of a separator. He's got too good of inside-outside versatility. Justin Herbert's too good of a quarterback. So go out and aggressively try to get Ladd McConkey right now this week. And same thing with Brian Thomas. Those would be my 2 recommendations. So stock down on both of them, but also my number 1 and number 2 dynasty buy in all of Dynasty Fantasy Football right now. So there it is, guys. Fantasy Dynasty Report for Week 4, NFL Rookie Report for Week 4, and the NFL Draft Stock Report for Week 5 of the college football season. If you're enjoying this content, please get over to the website, S2S Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. Check out the premium content tab. See what you got for $9.99. Getting it early in the year gives you access all the way through up until next Labor Day. You're going to get so much information in these 3 sets of notebooks. You get the scouting notebook, you get the rankings notebook, you get the draft projections notebook. You get it all for $9.99. If you've bought it in the past, please consider purchasing it again. If you've been a longtime listener but never purchased it, please try to consider purchasing it and helping us out. And if you're new to Saturday, Sunday, we definitely hope you consider purchasing it out. It is the lifeblood of what we continue to do here. Without enough sales there, we wouldn't be able to continue to bring the podcast to you in the same form or capacity that we do right now. So we hope that you consider purchasing it and checking it out. Every dollar goes right back in the subscription, server fees, podcasting fees, everything that we need here to keep S2S going. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.